Today we have Derick Lewis with Pinnacle Logistics. Derick, you want to introduce yourself and see what you do?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Derick Lewis. I'm the Human Resources Manager for Pinnacle Logistics. Right now I am based out of the Allentown, Pennsylvania location, but we do have various different locations within the United States, and I assist mainly with training their employees, training human resource employees, as well as a lot of their recruiting for higher up positions, such as general managers, assistant general managers, human resource positions, human resource managers, things as such.
All right, Derick, how long have you been with this company?
So I've been with this company for a little over a year now. I believe August of last year was when I first started.
All right, and how long have you been in the human resource field?
I've been in the human resources field for about 5 years now, 5 years in total.
5 years. All right, so before human resources, what you used to do?
So I used to be in the behavioral health, mental health field prior to this, prior to getting any experience in the human resources field itself. I enjoyed working with people. I just had a niche with trying to understand why people make the decisions that they make.
Oh, all right. I know. Way before, but when you figured out you wanted to be a human resource manager?
It was funny. At my last job, I was working for a company where I was assisting businesses. I was assisting businesses not only create policies for their employees, but doing a lot of the conflict resolution, because I was helping people find jobs with these companies, and we were offering them a bunch of federal incentives to hire these people and train them. So with that, I started realizing that I'm doing a lot of the human resource aspects. I was recruiting for the company. Mm-hmm. I was doing minor payroll for the company to make sure that they received their reimbursement. So I was doing partial payroll. I was creating policies and helping write handbooks. I was doing contracts. So I said, why not jump into human resources? Because that's pretty much what I was doing.
All right, and most people, they have a fear for human resource managers. Why you think so? Why?
Well, people always believe that because human resource managers, human resources in general, we create policies and we tell people, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. When in reality, the way I look at it is, I look at it as you're ultimately like a lawyer, right? You're interpreting what a particular policy means, and you're explaining it to somebody who knows nothing about policies, right? So if somebody says, well, how come I can't have a personal relationship with my manager? Well, why is that frowned upon? Well, you explain to them what implications that could have and how that can be viewed. So again, just like any human being, if you tell people not to do something, they're more inclined to want to do it.
Okay. And what will you tell somebody wanna follow your path, wanna be a human resource manager?
Honestly, you have to love people. If you don't enjoy working with people, this isn't going to be the field for you. I would tell you the best advice I can give you is advice that I've passed along to a few people, which would be, try to fully understand why that person is sitting in front of you. For example, if somebody's looking for a job, well, why are they looking for a job, right? Everybody says, well, I'm looking for a job because I don't have a job, or I'm looking to move up. As a human resource manager, it's your job to fully understand, well, why are they looking to leave the company they're in, right? What's going on? Is it personnel? Is it, maybe it's too far from home. Maybe they're looking for a pay raise, right? Some people make lateral moves in hopes that they're going to grow. Or is that particular individual are they the problem in their organization, which in turn is causing them to leave because, now the environment's become very toxic.
Right. What helped you along the way, learning to deal with, because you say you get to realize that you love interacting with people. So what helped you, besides that love you had, what helped you keep building?
Really, it was just, it was trial and error. I didn't know. I wasn't one of those guys that left high school and said, you know what, I know exactly what I want to do. I want to become a doctor. This is how I'm going to get there. And I have friends that are like that. But I was never that person. I enjoyed I enjoy, I guess you'd call me a little old school. I enjoy talking to people all over the phone for long periods of time, helping them through what they were going through, giving advice, saying, hey, if I was in your situation, this is how I would do this.
Right.
While I was in school, working on group projects with people, explaining to them, hey, this is why this would be a good step in comparison to doing this. Dealing with difficult personalities, dealing with difficult bosses. I had one college professor that was very difficult to deal with, and I never understood that. And a good friend of mine told me, gave me some tips on how to handle him. And because of that, I attribute a lot of my educational success to her, because if it wasn't for her, I honestly would not have my master's degree now, because I would have given up.
Right. So what kind of attitude do you think a human resource manager should have?
You always have to me, from my standpoint, you always have to be upbeat. You have to be, you can't be lethargic. You have to be upbeat. You have to be for the people. You have to be able to communicate to individuals on the level that they're at, and not just necessarily think, I'm going to say this and they're going to fully understand exactly what I'm saying. Sometimes using simpler terms works the best. You have to remember, and I'll use my company for an example. I have my master's degree, but the individuals that we hire to our entry-level employees, 99.9% of them just have a high school diploma, and some of them have high school diplomas from another country. So with that being said, sometimes I have to communicate to them the knowledge that I have or what I'm interpreting, and break it down a little bit differently so that they understand exactly the direction that they need to go as the employee to make sure that this is a positive experience for them.
Okay. And you guys hiring right now?
Yes. We are hiring in a lot of our different locations. Particularly our Allentown location, we are looking to hire some entry-level agents. But if you go on our website, pinnaclelogistics.com, you'd be able to /careers. You'd be able to see a lot of the other positions that we have throughout the United States.
All right, and this is September 2019.
Correct.
Right. All right. Back to on your journey. What about books though?
So I'm huge into sports. I'm huge into basketball. Growing up, basketball taught me a lot. And basketball mainly taught me structure. It taught me how to be a team player. It taught me that not everybody can be Michael Jordan. So one of the books that really stood out to me, sports-wise, leading into this, is Michael Jordan's books. They really getting to know him better as an individual and seeing where he failed in life, right? Getting cut from a high school team, not being a phenomenal player starting off, and then really sharpening his tool set and harnessing his skills to become the player that he's known today. Along with that book also inspired me to look at failure a little bit differently. Michael Jordan has failed in a few different aspects. Being a team owner, his team's not necessarily the best team, right? I know he hasn't coached per se, but Steve Kerr coached the Golden State Warriors, and they're doing phenomenal. He failed in baseball. He wasn't a phenomenal baseball player, and he made the decision to go back into basketball. So that taught me a lot on how to look at failure a little bit differently. So instead of looking at it as failure and just taking it as, well, you know what, I failed, I'm done with this isn't for me, just taking what I've learned in this particular skill set or in this particular area and applying it somewhere else. So looking at transferable skills. Michael Jordan was a phenomenal athlete, so he was able to take his training from basketball and believe that he can translate it to baseball. And when that didn't work out, he was able to go back and still have that same hunger, still have that same drive, which led the Chicago Bulls to 3 more additional championships in the 90s. Another book that stands out to me as well is Malcolm X's autobiography. The reason why that stood out to me is because the Malcolm X that most people know wasn't always the Malcolm X that he was. So it took time for him to go through trials and tribulations to become the man that we know him to be today. And I believe that without failure, there's no success. I wouldn't have gotten here without people telling me no or not being able to push my limits personally to get to that next step.
Right. And the books, that was the books that helped you along. Who was the most influential person in your life?
So I would have to say the most influential person to me is my father. You know, my father was relatively old when he had me. He had me when he was 51. He was born in 1936, and unfortunately he passed away in 2014. So he had me when he was 51, and I learned, a lot of what I learned from him wasn't necessarily physical, because he couldn't keep up with me on the basketball court. You know, he was a relatively fit man, but he couldn't keep up with me physically as I was, you know, in my teenage years. So a lot of what he taught me was how to deal with the mental aspect of everything, right? The mind is always greater than the body. So he taught me how to wait and think things through before reacting. He taught me not to be reactive to a situation, right? Let's say, for example,
Think it through first.
absolutely, absolutely. You know, for example, oh, well, this person doesn't like me. You know, instead of reacting and normally as human beings, we tend to say, okay, well, why don't you like me? I'm a great person, without really fully understanding that we always look at ourselves as the good guys in our story. This is our story. So everything we do, we believe is the best. So he taught me how to take time and sit back and observe, right? Fully look at, well, why would this person not like me? And look in yourself to see what traits you can change. I'm not saying that, you know, take that advice and then change yourself completely to please other people. You know, unfortunately, you'll never be able to do that. But take that and say, okay, well, this person doesn't like me because of my approach towards something. You know, being in a human resources field, well, if this person doesn't like if my approach works for 9 people but doesn't work for one, then now I need to tailor my approach differently for that one person. So a lot of what I learned from him was to really just sit back, observe, and everything's going to fall into place.
All right. What do you say about your failures? Any failures along the way?
So failure. So before I fully jumped into the human resources field, I was doing college admissions for a for-profit school.
Right.
And I'm very process driven. I'm very meticulous. And while I was working there, trying to get students, the best advice that was ever given to me was the individuals that reach out to the school have a problem, and you're supposed to have a solution for them. So I ran with that, and I thought it was great advice. I still think it's great advice, especially in the sales world. But the problem is that sales can be a little unpredictable. At the time, schools weren't in demand as they were previously, right? When the United States went into the recession, everybody wanted to go to school, everybody wanted to go to a trade school, everybody wanted that education. And at the time, people weren't as stressed really to go to school. So it was a little difficult, and they had a lot of different options. And we trained our particular students to become diesel technicians. So one week I could have 10 enrollments, and I'd be the man for that particular week. And then the next week I could have 2 enrollments. And now all of a sudden, you know, I'm being pulled into the campus director's office, and now I'm being asked, well, what did you do wrong? So now my process is being reevaluated. And through that, it really turned into a real low point for me. And I didn't really understand how to process that. Because this is the first time, you know, growing up, I'm not saying that I was successful at everything I did, but for the most part, I was always able to look at the other side of this. Well, why isn't this working, and adjust accordingly? But because everything was so rapid, I couldn't really figure out what I was doing wrong, especially if I was doing the same process over and over again. So I beat myself up pretty hard for that, and I look at that as one of my failures. And it got to the point where I literally walked in one day and just told the director of admissions that, you know what, this isn't for me anymore. And, you know, I separated myself from the company, and, you know, I had no idea what I was going to do after that.
All right, that's the failure. What about the biggest lesson you have learned?
So the biggest lesson that I've learned is that you really have to not only do you have to have common sense, but you have to be adaptable. One of the things that I believe is that we fail as human beings when we let technology become better than us. When we say, you know what, I don't want this. So a lot of people, a lot of people right now are struggling with social media, and social media is huge, right? But a lot of people are struggling with social media because they say, you know what, I don't want to deal with social media. I don't want Facebook. I don't want Instagram. Fine. But then when you create your image, your business, or who you are, right? Your image of who you are to the public, it becomes difficult if you're not fluent with those. So, the biggest lesson is always stay on top of how the world changes, because you never know how that's going to affect you in your field.
Right. All right. And what about your curiosity? What about you? What you're most curious about right now?
So my curiosity, what am I most curious about right now? I'm really curious to see how the HR field continues to grow and continues to develop. With everything that's going along, individuals identifying themselves differently than what they're classified as by society. I'm really interested to see how we adapt and accommodate and continue to be for the people.
Okay, Derick. So what are you most proudest of?
From a personal standpoint, I would say that the thing I'm most proud of is my family. I believe that work doesn't define who I am as an individual. So having a strong family support to be able to come home to and communicate what I'm stressing about is significant, right? We're only going to be as strong as the people that support us to an extent. Career-wise, my greatest accomplishment in the career field would probably be getting to where I'm at now. Being a human resource manager. Again, like I said, when I started this journey, I didn't necessarily know where I was going to go. I have my bachelor's degree in criminal justice, so I didn't really think that going from criminal justice to human resources would be something that would be possible, especially at that time. 10 years ago, if you were to ask me what I wanted to become, I'd say, well, I want to be like my dad. My dad was a correction officer. I want to be a correction officer. I want to be better. But looking now, I did a lot of things that career-wise that I didn't think that I'd actually do otherwise.
Right. So, what if you had known if you had known before? What would you do now? The things you have known now. If you didn't know it earlier on, anything you would do differently?
As much as I would love to say yes, I'm gonna have to say no, because everything that I went through made me who I am today. And even little things. If I would have gotten into the school that I originally wanted to go to, then I would have never met my wife, which in turn I would have never had my son. I look at little things like that. Let's say if I would have joined the military, right? I would have never met the people who I'm very close with now and who have helped me grow into the individual that I am today. So I'm a strong believer that if I would have known now what I know then, if I would have known then what I know now, I probably would have been in a different career path. When I was younger, and I'm not saying that I'm not hungry now for success, but, when I was younger, my aspirations were to make as much money as I possibly could. Again, younger, 18, 20-year-old, I want to make, quick money. I want to be rich. That was my goal. But, when I got married, it was like a light switch, Now I realize that every decision that I make from this point forward affects another individual. So I had to be very cautious of what I do. So let's say, for example, when I was younger, let's say I might have ran up my credit card, but now that I'm older, once that moment in time happened, then I realized, now I need to be smarter with my financial decisions. So instead of looking at it from that young mind perspective of, I want to make as much money as I can, now I'm looking at it as, what am I leaving my family when I'm not here, right? So that's what I look at. That's the way I look at it.
So you're not looking for any more hustle. You're more looking for something solid.
Absolutely.
Like a base.
Absolutely. And and being in human resources, there's nothing but growth. I appreciate the opportunity that Pinnacle Logistics has given me right now.
Yes.
And I'm just looking to continue to grow within the organization.
Okay. All right. So Derick, what will you tell the younger people? What message would you leave with them who trying to pursue the corporate world, trying to build up to become a manager? What will you tell them?
Honestly, if you want to become a manager, the best advice that I can give you is that you want to push yourself. You don't want to have limits. You want to make sure that you stand for something, right? Because that's what people are going to see. That's how people gravitate towards leaders. As a manager, you're a leader, right? You're training individuals to do the work that you once did because you were effective at it. So you're giving them helpful tips and insights on how to become better. I'm going to say that you need to figure out, you need to be able to piece yourself together based on the information that you know about yourself candidly. So if you know, I knew that I always wanted to work with people, and that was the base of what I knew. I didn't know, like, hey, I want to be in human resources. I have friends that I asked, I was like, did you ever think that I'd be doing human resources, or that I would teach students? And they say, no, I would never thought that. So you have to piece yourself together. When you're unsure of things, you say, hey, okay, what am I good at? What do I enjoy doing? If you enjoy sports, then look into sports as a career, right? How do you grow from there? But you have to know yourself.
All right, Derick. So thank you very much for giving me the time for the interview.
Absolutely. Thank
All
you,
right.
Don. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Derick, and I hope to see you soon again. Maybe we could do a follow-up.
Absolutely. It sounds great.
We could look at the comments and answer some questions
Absolutely.
later on. Right?
Absolutely. Sounds great. Thank you.
All right, Derick. All right, yeah.